This video is brought to you by HalloCasa. Our tool transforms independent local real estate agents to global real estate agents. Create your own profile for free and get contacted by international investors. Sign up with the link in the description. Hello and welcome everyone to our 215th session of HalloCasa. My name is Michael and today I'm talking to Jen Marie from Scottsdale, the powerhouse behind the Jen Marie home team powered by eXp Realty and the author of Renaissance Real Estate Agent. Jen's journey in real estate began back in 2003 and she quickly rose to the top, becoming the #1 agent in her office within her first full year. By 2011, she was flipping over 40 homes in a single year, while she also was scaling her traditional real estate business with cutting-edge digital marketing. Her leadership has earned her national recognition from being named Team of the Year by the Arizona School of Real Estate and Business to a decade-long streak on Real Trends Best Agents list, the leading #1 eXp team in Arizona and second nationwide. Beyond the numbers, Jen is also a coach and author, a mom of 4, and a passionate advocate for creating a lifestyle that inspires joy, connection, and possibility, not just transaction. Jen Marie, thank you so much for your time. I know I tend to say Jean Marie, but it's Jen Marie. Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. I love your podcast. The journey has been amazing. It's been 22 years in real estate. I grew up in Riverside, California, and in Riverside, it was just more like when I was growing up, even as a kid, I had these big dreams, like, what are you going to do when you grow up? And every year I wanted to be something different. I wanted to be the president of the United States. I wanted to be a high-powered stockbroker in New York. It was just learning. I just loved, I was just obsessed with. I had, humble beginnings, it didn't have a lot, had to make a little go a long way. When my parents divorced, it got, really tight on money. And so I would be surrounded by, friends, and I would be like, what are you going to do with your life? Even in high school, and no one, nobody thought about that. It was just like, what am I going to do? From day to day, what am I going to do if I, get a job? When I was 18, I moved out to the beach. I was super excited. I knew I always wanted to have a business of my own. Didn't know what it was, but, I was a hustler, and I can't tell you, most managers, that I worked for sucked. I was way better than them. So I got in, I signed up for business school. I moved to the beach, and a month later, I found out I was pregnant. So I'm like, okay, I had to step back. I was on my own, 18 years old. And so what can I do to start a business? I need to make a lot of money. I lived in the beach. My rent alone at that time in 1997 was $1,700 a month, which was a considerable amount. So I cocktail waitress, I hustled. I was almost going to open up a tanning salon. And then I had some friends that were flipping homes here in Arizona. So I was like, I looked and I tallied up my down payment, and I looked at a home to flip at the same time. And both of those mortgages were less than the rent I paid in Huntington Beach. So I took all the money I saved up, like almost every single penny. I was living off credit cards those first 2 months. But I bought my first 2 homes. I flipped that one and got in. So that was the end of '03. For every home I was flipping, I'd have an open house. I would door knock the neighborhood. I would cold call, inviting people me to our open house. So quickly, I found out that, I love to work. And so the harder I worked, the more money I could make. And it was great because my daughter at that time was 5 years old. And I would take her on showings with me, or take her on appointments with me. She would have open houses. She would even color flyers. And so that was really exciting. So I quickly got in, and '05 happened. And if you guys remember 2005, it was one of the biggest booms our industry has ever seen. So I thought I was on fire. Not only was that, I was developing 9 luxury homes. I owned multifamily, I owned single family rentals. I pretty much took all my money I made and put it back into real estate, thinking I was doing the right thing. And it was great through 2006. And then 2008 happened. And that was one of the scariest things I had ever gone through up until that point. I lost everything. I lost all those properties to foreclosure. I barely was able to save the one we lived in. I would wake up, our car would be repoed. I think the bottom, when I hit rock bottom, and that was in 2009, my card got declined for lice shampoo for my daughter. And that was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But luckily, I got into short sales, I got into bank owned homes, and I was able to, carve out a decent path. I was able to take care of my family. I definitely was not thriving in any way. I still had all that debt because I was over, a couple $1 million in debt. So I still remember that day I was worth zero, and that was an amazing day when you're no longer in the red. So that was great. And so in 2010 and 2011, I was in REOs, I was in short sales. And the thing is I loved short sales as hard as they were. But the cool thing about them was that every person I was able to help, it was so meaningful to them. I had seen people that were in foreclosure. She's 8 months pregnant and her husband was murdered. And when you're able to help people like that, those are not just clients for life, those are like dear friends for life. So that was great. In 2011, I had an investor contact me from one of my Google pay-per-click ads. And he called a number of agents. Apparently, he said I was very humble, but also very knowledgeable. He flew me out to California. He had this huge operation. So that was great. So 2011, I flipped 50 homes. And then 2012 happens, and guess what? The market turns again. All of a sudden, the hedge funds came in. And, I was like, you could not compete with a hedge fund investor. They would pay over market value. Well, I can't afford to go into the red on multiple homes. They could. So I had to pivot again. So that's 2013 is when I got into masterminds. That was the first time that I started plugging into education, starting surrounding myself by people that were very successful, that were doing better than me. And that's really when the trajectory of my professional life started to really take off. So 2014, was already a hustler. I was selling 10, 15, $20 million of volume just myself with an assistant. So I decided to start a team in 2014. So I still have my original agent that we partnered up with. So that from 2014 to 2018, I was with Remax, and I built my business up to being the #1 female Remax team leader in the state of Arizona. But I only had 3 agents, and it was really, really hard to grow. I mean, one of the craziest thing is like when you become a team leader, it is a whole different skill set. You have to know about things like profit and loss statements, which are like not my strength at all. They're pretty dang scary if you actually ask me. Luckily, I have an expert, that helps me with that. So quick, I'll just fast track today because there's a lot more in our story that we could dig into later, but have 65 agents. I have 550 agents in my international network. I have multiple streams of income. And 4 kids later, I have raised my kids in real estate. They are all getting real estate licenses at some point. And really, it's at this point, it's been so amazing. I've done all the wins myself. I've gotten all the trophies and all of that. But it's so much more fun watching others win. And when you both financially benefit, it's not about the money. The money follows, but it's about partnering with agents, partnering, not just changing their lives professionally, but personally. I've seen so many agents over the last 12 years that have like lost 50 pounds, paid off all their debt, send their kids to college, buy their first investment property, build multiple streams of income, and truly live that's why our tagline is living an extraordinary life, because it goes beyond just the financial, right? It goes on to the spiritual. It truly is a legacy that you could leave behind. And that's been the most exciting thing that I've experienced in this life so far.
Thank you. Let's dissect. First question. You mentioned you were a couple of millions in debt. Technically, How does it look like for someone who has never experienced this one? Was it that on your asset value and it sounds worse than it is, and you have your monthly payments and you have to serve them? Or is it more than that? Explain us the situation, please.
Yeah, so what happened in 2005 is property values soared like 56%. So at that point in 2006, I had say just leave out the other properties, look at my like luxury properties that I was building. The construction loans on those were 1.1 million. Well, guess what? They by time they were ready in was it '07, the market was already tanking. I couldn't sell them. Well, I tried to short sell them. I even flew in auctioneers. I tried everything. But the values end up dropping to about 350,000. So it was worth 1.1 million as our loan value, not even just selling costs. And there were still improvements we had to made. Now they're worth 350. So I have a negative gap of what was that, like 600,000 per house. I did have a partner, so half of that was our debt, half of it was theirs. But that was a non-conforming loan, so they personally sued me for what they owed me. I ended up condensing and paying them 5 grand. That's as owe them like millions of dollars, and they settled for 5 grand. And that was really just because my bank statement said had about $1,200 in my checking account. So there was nothing for them to chase. So eventually we had IRS tax debt that we had to pay back. There was just a lot of things that we had to pay back, and that's why it took a longer, is because it was some of the debt was excused when the other properties went to foreclosure. Just dinged my record, but I no longer owed that debt. But yeah, I mean, it was scary times. I had to live off credit cards, like there would be months where I would have a closing fell through and I had no idea how I was going to pay the mortgage next month.
Short sales, is it same like in stocks? So you just said you tried to short sell it. So mortgage, as you said, has this value. You owe this particular value, and then suddenly market crashes, and you definitely have a loss there's a gap between that. Is that correct, or is my assumption
Yeah,
wrong?
I mean, when the boom happened and everybody was buying, what happened in 2008 is property values ended up going down 70% between '08 and 2010 in many areas. So say a buyer bought the home at 550,000. Well, that same home could be worth about 115,000. So they have a negative equity of like 350. I'm not doing the math all correctly, but you pretty much get the gist of it. So you have to go to the bank and get them to accept less than what's owed, like significantly less, right? But you had to prove a hardship. Now, if the seller had a lot of money, the bank was likely not to would be likely not to approve that short sale. But when a bank is looking at a client and they have zero money, there's nothing they can do. The best thing for them to do is just to take the asset back and sell it on the open market and get it off their books. So that was keeping when you did a short sale. What was the benefit is that you avoided having a foreclosure ding your record, which can take 7 years to come off. A short sale, you can have it on your off your record, sometimes in as little as 1 to 2 years. So by helping sellers avoid foreclosure, it was really a way for them to have a second chance.
Yes, I understood that there's quite an industry behind, because you act as an intermediary helping basically both parties, the banks getting that basically back on the market a little bit, and then also having better terms or somehow acceptable terms. Because as you said, you even can talk with the bank saying, hey, listen, let's not go into foreclosure, because it might not even be in the interest of the respective bank, correct?
No, because if the seller stays there and it takes the bank, 6 months, 9 months, a year for that seller to get out. Meanwhile, the home's usually deteriorating. It is in the best interest of that bank to take back the property to also make sure that no further damage gets done to protect that value.
Thank you. You mentioned also your hustle attitude, but also while you said, I'm creating long-lasting relationships, and I want to make sure that you will succeed, and you said it very, very nicely. You will succeed when you don't focus on money directly, like in the very beginning, but it will follow. Now, putting yourself back into the situation of saying, okay, you were really behind money, or money was a huge element for you, a very important element. It was not abundant in this moment, but you want to act in let's say, morally and ethically in a very nice way, or in a way being integrated with acting with high integrity. I'm sorry. How did you manage this balance between, hey, I need to hustle, I'm going all in, but the results might not come directly, or I can't push too much, even though I really need it because I'm customer centric. I'm focused on the highest customer service.
Yeah, that was never my thing. I like if I didn't believe in it, I can't sell it. That's just being authentic is it's hard for me to be fake. And I truly do care about like my job as far as like if I'm not doing the best job I can for my clients, I mean, I feel bad. I mean, there's a people pleaser in me, but I truly want them to be in the best place possible. But the thing is like you can't look at, especially in real estate. Say you get a client today, hey, you're going to buy a house. I'm excited, right? It maybe take you 2 to 3 months to find that house, right? And then from there on, it's going to take you another 30 days to close or more. So it might be like today, I meet you, I'm not going to get paid for on average like 3 to 4 to 6 months. So it's the daily activity. So it's showing up, every day, like having touch points, looking at properties together, understanding like what your goals are. And so with that, I've always understood it's the lead measure is all the things that you do to generate those leads, right? So by time that's all done, that's when your lag measure happens. So when you look at closings, well, great, I have 5 closings. But what's going on your lead measures? What are your calls like? What are your appointments like? What is your pipeline like? Because that's where your database is. That's where you should be focusing because that's what you can control. So yeah, for me, it's just been like, I don't care. I'm not above anything. I didn't love open houses. I've liked to scale my business in different ways, but hey, like when all I had was time in my hands and not a lot of budget, I would hold open houses every weekend. I would door knock. I would, like I said, cold call things I don't like to do and necessarily didn't do long term. But you do what it takes, and you look at the unique market you're in and you see what are the opportunities in this market because there's always opportunities. And especially in challenging markets and especially today, because not only is our market right now challenging, we've got higher interest rates than what we had seen for so long. We've got politically crazy things that are getting people worried. But now more than ever is when the most opportunity happens. Because I'll see, like, even in 2020, I'm not going to lie, I probably got an ego, right? Because I did, really well and I thought I was really good. And then 2022 handed me my ego back. I'm like, thank you very much. But it got challenging for the first time. But the thing is, if you're going to do the things that most people won't, these are the markets we thrive because we know like in this market I like to say we're all new agents. I don't care if you've been in the market 25 or been in the industry 25 years or 2 years. In today's industry where AI, where technology, where Darwinism is happening, the bigger getting bigger, it's never been more competitive. But for the ones that are all in and that are humble and coachable and open and willing to work hard. And that doesn't mean work 60 hours a week, but when you have your time, use it smartly. Do the things that you know you should be doing, even if you don't feel like be doing, because it'll catch up. Most agents are lazy. We live in a lazier workforce, I would say altogether. But when you get to the real estate industry, it gets real lazy. Most agents are real lazy. So if you're very intentional about your time, time block your time for your families, your kids' activities. I don't miss those kinds of things, but I build life around it.
Now imagine you wouldn't have gone for real estate, but you would have stayed in the tanning business. Do you think you would have scaled in the same way and
Oh gosh, no.
had the same passion and would have been as successful? Maybe you would have started your global franchise in terms of tanning studio. You don't know.
Oh gosh, no. No way in the whole world. I'm a health nut, so tanning does not follow into like my like health beliefs. But beyond that, having a tanning salon customer is very surface level transactional. Can you imagine like how unmeaningful that is compared to a home, most people's, biggest investment they ever make?
Give us more details there. What's your passion regarding real estate? Because you have to be passionate about and also be original. You just mentioned, okay, biggest home or biggest transaction of your entire life. Fair enough, that's one thing. Other elements where you say, hey, it's such a nice industry. It drives me, it wakes me up every morning because I'm just so naturally drawn to that.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it, I grew up, I had a broken home, from divorce, and sadly, my kid's father and I had a divorce. But I've always wanted a happy home. That's always been, my dream, and how important it is. Because if you don't have a happy home life, how are you able to have a happy life? So that home is so more incredibly important than just the structure that's there. I mean, we raise our kids there. We cry in our closets. We hold Christmas parties for our family in the living room. It's one of the most meaningful things most people ever do in their lives, as well as the biggest financial aspect. I was somehow living off $600 a month, when I first had my daughter. But I saw, wow, you think about it, say $100,000 house at that time, you need some of it back then was 100% financing, but $3,500 down, I could save that in, 6 months. And it's so as a way for me to provide financial security, a happy home, a beautiful home, and when I got to go fix and flip, I would go make these homes beautiful. And I just imagine the families that can go there, raise their home in a beautiful home. But then there's the financial aspect, of course. It's real estate is one of the only industries with 90 hours of education. You can make six, seven, eight-figure income. So what better opportunity, as well as just providing happy homes, helping clients invest, but also create those multiple streams of income. So many different ways to carve out your real estate career. You could do investment properties, you can do first time home buyers, you can work with luxury listings, you can develop, you can own commercial. There's so many different ways you can carve it out. And that's like what's super exciting is like you build it, you design it, you design your life.
Regarding then from there, multiplying your design, basically multiplying your knowledge and onboarding other real estate agents. What was the moment for you when you said, okay, I definitely want to grow. I want to also maybe implement processes and best practices and allow others to learn from my wisdom and from my experience and not going and staying on your own basically and just do 90%, 99% everything as a single broker.
Yeah, Helen Keller said it perfectly. Alone, we can do so little. Together, we can do so much. And as I look back at my career, like say I can have a DeLorean and go travel back in time and go back to 2008, I would have been surrounded. I would have reached out to the mentors I have today, the ones that were absolutely killing it in 2008, 9 by scaling like huge bank-owned business and short sale. Those could have been the best years of my career had I been surrounded with the people that I am today. So when I had moved to eXp, the way I saw it and the reason why I moved, first of all, I was paying Remax way too much money. There was no value in the company. Yeah, I liked my broker, but they didn't help me build my business. But it was hard. Like I said, there was profitability. But when I looked at the eXp platform, the math made sense. The math was incredible, but it wasn't that. It was the people. I had known, say, Kyle Whissel and Dan Beer, who, Kyle Whissel, number one San Diego team year after year for both units and volume, just an incredible guy. And he also had a life. He got to like travel the world and spend time with his family. So I knew he's legit. I knew he can help me. He had already been where I was at and now is 10 steps forward. So I found that out. And then I looked at like my growth trajectory. Well, the only way at that point I was going to grow is to help others grow. I had maxed out like so much time I can do, right? There's only so much production I can do alone. But it was really hard to grow my team of three. So then I looked at my team, and one of them was Marcia, the one that had joined my first agent I had hired in 2014. Now fast track 11 years later, she has two grandchildren. But I'm like, I know she's never going to want to grow her own team. She likes to be an agent. She loves being an agent. She loves to be in a supportive position. But I'm like, this is a way for her to build multiple streams of income. This is a way for her to be able to actually retire and be with those grandkids. Then I looked at my other demographic. That was my top agent. That was my like high D, just like me, but in 2 years, I want to grow my own team. Well, that's hard. When you have a team of three, your top agent leaves and takes the leads with her. It's devastating. But then I thought this would help her instead of the whole like we're splitting up thing. It's like, how can I help you grow? I'll share anything, not just my wins, but all my fails too. So it was win-win in both trajectory. And since then, now I've been able to partner up with so many like successful teams throughout the country. We're learning from each other on a daily basis. And so that collaboration is so important. If there was like number one piece of advice you could ever give to an agent, it would be like surround yourself by people that are going where you are going. Surround yourself by people that have been where you're at and have gotten through it. Be around people that have a mindset of abundance. Be around people that are always lifelong growers because when you are, you will have no choice but to level up. And when you get into real estate, like for me, I became a young mom. Sometimes you have to look at your tribe and let some go. Is this the people? Is this my go forward future team? Or is this the, people that out of your tribe either have negative mindsets? They're always, talking about other people, talking about other agents, jealous. Those are the people that sometimes you have to say goodbye. So, you're the sum total of the five people you're around with the most. So if you can have that mentality, there is no bad market.
Give us an overview about your book. It's The Renaissance Real Estate Agent, and I'm very curious about understanding more about it. And also it's not a normal real estate agent book. It's something else. Give us an overview of that.
Yeah, well, I'll kind of preface this with to say that I am obsessed with like multiple topics, science, neuroscience, history, archaeology, evolution. But I was especially fascinated with the Renaissance period. Leonardo da Vinci is, he is like one of my favorite humans of all time. But like that whole era, I was obsessed with the art, with the capitalism, and just with the science. It was just a huge period of growth. And I think that so in 1460 there was something like 60 Bibles worldwide. With the printing press, there was 2 million by the end of 1500, or by the end of 1500. So if we look at like how fast we've grown today, YouTube, how many multi-million views that they get, the industry is changing fast. And I actually wrote that book, what was in 2020 and 21. AI wasn't like what it is today. It's not just that our markets change, it's that our industry's changing. And there's an art and there is a science to real estate. And when you combine those and have a system, so the whole point of my book was the art of systems and designing your professional life and personal life. So it goes in everything. My book goes into everything about how important lead generation is, how important follow-up is, how important having a business plan is, diving deep on your sources, but it's also going to teach you how to run an actual business because that's what's missing in the industry so much is like they'll tell you how to sell more homes. And that's great because that's a part of the book. And that obviously, we need to know how to do that. But how do we actually run these businesses so at some point we can actually retire or maybe work in a capacity that we want to work, not forced to work? The last thing I want to do is die on a doorstep at 92 trying to show a house. So how can we create those multiple streams of income? How do we create having actual wealth and a spiritual part of it? So part of that book goes into like how to balance life, right? Like I have four kids, ages 9 to 28. I and my kids and my family are everything to me. So it's how to run, things like say the family board meeting for my family. So every Sunday we have a sit down. Me and my husband have a separate one. Me and my kids have a separate one. Planning the week, as a real estate agent, it gets really stressful. Some weeks you're just absolutely jammed, and the next week you're like open. So, you might tell your husband something like, hey guys, I'm going to be really slammed this week. I'm going to need a little bit more help around the house. Hey, we got your soccer practice Thursday and your game Saturday. What is your big wow of the week? What are you grateful for? It's just a really great way to like when you're running your professional life, like you are your personal life, having things like date nights every other Friday or church or hike or what you do something for maybe you spiritually every week. It's really building that like wheel of life. So it's never balanced. It never will be balanced, but you're able to like flow into that balancing act.
When was the moment that you became so spiritual? Because most of your elements, and I really appreciate is has this very deep spiritual foundation. I can hear that and read it between the lines. You probably spend time listening to elements from Jody Spencer, from Know Thyself, maybe from other influences and podcasts. And you might also think like about an oversoul of elements which bring us not only here in our 3D world, but also in our 5D world together, thinking about neurons which fire together, also wire together, and having a certain wavelength which is similar to someone else, not necessarily because you're close to them physically, but also you're on a same pattern or in the same element regarding language and growth mindset. Maybe I'm totally wrong and it's just an assumption, but I feel you have this foundational element of thought, which gives you a lot of grounding and a strong North Star to say, this is my why. And from there, I go and I have my plan, my goals, and I know exactly why I do it. And maybe this is also necessary in order to be successful, because making more money is just a means to an end, or it's the other way around. And it can't be the end goal. I'm just curious there because I feel you have something very deep there.
For me, where my spiritual, self started, I guess was very young. I grew up in a church that was really judgmental, very fear-based. It was never a church I felt like accepted. I never, and for me, I just didn't believe it. So I was a kid, and actually in third grade, I remember I used to be bullied a lot, and there was like this kid from Vietnam that moved over, and he was so cute and so nice to me, and I was so like fascinated with his religion, like Buddhism. And I was in third grade, and I got a book from the library on Buddhism. But like probably one of the biggest things, if I could go back and change, is I kind of dismissed like God in general as more, I would say, agnostic. But what I also been fighting, starting, when I was 18 and I drank for the first time, is that I was an alcoholic. I wasn't somebody that needed to drink every day. I had kids, I was pregnant, but when I drank, I couldn't stop. And so, it took me a long time. It took me like it should have been multiple rock bottoms. But in 2018, I was at that point. I was suicidal. And so I was actually at a real estate conference, and my real estate coach came to me, and she had been sober 30 years. And she had the talk, and I knew it was time because I knew I couldn't die. I knew I wanted to die. I knew I couldn't die because it was my four kids. So I got on my knees and I prayed, and I made that prayer of, God, I just want you to remove this desire to drink away, and I promise to pay it back and help others. And it was a full surrender. It was like, I can't do this alone. And something that I cannot explain happened because from that night, I've never had a single desire, not a single temptation. And that had never been experienced in my life. And let me preface, like I had gone 2 years here, or a year and a half here, or 9 months here. I never went a single day without thinking about it, not a single day. That's the only explanation I can say is God took it away. But the way I look at adversity, I'm very lucky to have many different adversity in my life because I don't think God gives you anything that you're not supposed to get through and be able to give it back and help others. You know, um, Sorry, this is emotional, but this has been where my spiritual experience started because I don't want people to have to go through financial devastation like I did. I don't want people to have to suffer in their own prison of alcoholism. But when I said goodbye to alcohol, I didn't know who I was. I did not have an identity. And I remember listening to a Tim Ferriss episode with Dr. Gabor Mate. For anybody who's ever faced addiction or mental health, he is one of the forefront amazing people. But the way I looked at it is what was a curse is also a blessing. I have all this energy. There's so much I want to do. And now, when I didn't waste my time on alcohol, I had this open schedule. Well, my identity became health. I wanted to get myself healthy. I had an autoimmune disease that I was almost going to lose my colon from. So, getting healthy was absolutely like it was like my life depended on it. So I took all that energy and I put it all into growth, and not just in health, but in neuroscience, in trauma, in healing, and how to run a business, how to give back to our clients more, how to give back to our agents more. It's like, I have, like I said, fascinations in a lot of different aspects in life, but now I have the energy to do it. But the only way I've been able to do it is my tribe gets better. I'm always looking to surround myself by better and better, people that were like, lifting each other up. This industry is hard, but it's also really fun. It's also very rewarding. But even when it's scary, when you're around people and you're doing it together, when you're doing it as a team, it feels so much better when you get to the other side.
Thank you so much for sharing this and also the nuances regarding making sure to be able to say no, not only to elements, but also to people, and therefore filtering and disqualifying people who basically deserve your attention, and the awareness of attention and time being a currency and saying, no, this is not good. I can't do that. And I act out of full or 1% integrity because those are my morals and my beliefs. Is there anything else you would like to add to those comments?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest problems, I think just humans today face is like wanting immediate gratification. You go to like, Instagram, how many likes did my post get? Who's doing what? Let's go eat, let's go to happy hour. Ooh, that's exciting. Let's Netflix and chill, the easy route. Like delayed gratification is where the dopamine is. When you go and, you don't feel like going to the gym and you actually force yourself to go after, that's when you're the most excited. You're proud of yourself. You can rely on yourself. The last thing you want to do is just, you don't trust yourself anymore if you're not showing up to your own commitments. If you're not going to the gym, you're not showing up for a commitment for yourself. If you're not making your calls, you're not showing up for a commitment for yourself. So delaying that gratification, you could either suffer, in the future, or you could suffer today. I'd rather suffer in the gym today than suffer from being in a wheelchair in 20 years from now. So that would be one of the things to, take away. I think one of the hardest things today, we're not worried about, most of us, like, we're not worried about, like, knives going through our ribs. The biggest thing we have to do is like have it the monotony, the boringness. Like, how can we handle boring? Lifting to me is boring. Love yoga, lifting's boring. I must lift. Making calls day after day, using scripts, boring. It does, you don't get super excited to go have to, say cold call, 20 people. But I'd rather suffer today making those boring calls and suffer, 6 months from now, and I can't provide my family a nice Christmas.
Jane Marie, actually, I would like to close it with this because I really think we had a very interesting, nice conversation, and we were destroyed a little bit going now towards the real estate market. And Scott said we can keep that for another day. I really appreciate the conversation. You have an impeccable life story so far. You started very young, had the guts to jump into real estate, and have been just keeping pushing and growing and never stopping. Your entire spirituality, I think, is helping you with that because it gives you a very strong grounding. Obviously, also your family and your entire calling regarding this one. Now, fast forward before we close, where do you see yourself heading towards the next, let's say, 3 to 5 to maybe even 10 years? What is the next step for you? What is your next goal?
Yeah, I mean, so my team I run here, we closed a little over 300 million last year, on track for just under 400 million this year. So growing a team, continuing to grow and pour into our agents, continue to grow my international network. So I love eXp and the financial platform that aligns, team builders and visionaries like all throughout the world. We're going to be in 43 countries, I've heard, by the end of the year. So now we're able to travel together. eXp Con in Italy just happened, where a bunch of us went out there to learn and go have fun in Italy. So, traveling more. I'm obsessed with archaeology. So for me, seeing the ruins throughout the world is something that, is on my bucket list. I do a lot of public speaking and really just want to grow that, whether it be from real estate or also, like personal stories. Did publish the first one. I can say that I had a publisher for my, actually it was a memoir. But I decided I did not like the written when it was written up by the ghostwriter. So I will tell that story in my own words. So that will be, one of the books I published. But sadly, only 3% of the America read for the sake of reading. And now in our language of like emojis, the art of language is getting lost. ChatGPT is now everybody's author, right? But giving back to the world, I would love to give them back books, books that you can hold, books that you can read. Every person has a story, but there's, the learning journey never ends. And then as far as like my grandkids, I want to be able to spend all the time in the world and live to them like at least 110, the good life 110, not like decrepit 110. But maybe meet my great grandchildren. So that's what excites me, being able to help in any way I can, whether it's, helping women leave, abusive relationships, whether it's, helping somebody discover sobriety. Maybe it's helping somebody discover God. Maybe it's helping, people to discover, getting over financial devastation. Maybe they're the first person in their family like me to ever break that, pattern of like being an entrepreneur, like building a business. So, hopefully I can leave my spark in the world. I've never seen a U-Haul follow a hearse. We can't take this stuff with us to the other side. But I also know there's a whole other, realm out there that, we're going to be able to, we'll go to, and, multiple lives ahead that we can help. So
How can people reach out to you if they are interested to get in contact with you?
yeah, just follow me on Instagram. That's jenmarie.homes. So that's JENMARIE.homes. So probably the easiest, best way, send me a DM. It'll be me responding. I love meeting people throughout. If you've resonated with this podcast at all.
Thank you so much, Jenmarie. I will put this one also into the show notes. Thank you so much. And yes, sending the best regards to Scottsdale in Arizona.
Namaste.
Bye-bye. This video is brought to you by HalloCasa. Our tool transforms independent local real estate agents to global real estate agents. Create your own profile for free and get contacted by international investors. Sign up with the link in the description.